All right. Before we do anything, let's slow this down. Wherever you are right now, driving, walking, folding laundry, laying flat on the floor, like, yeah, this where life landed me today. Take one breath that doesn't try to fix anything. In through the nose and out through the mouth. No rush, no catching up. You're not late. So, it's early in the year, January energy. A quiet stretch where the calendar is loud, but your soul's still rubbing his eyes. And I've been sitting with this phrase, I showed up. Now what? Because if we honest, showing up sounds simple, but it's actually one of the hardest things we do as creators, as humans, as people trying to align their lives with God. We romanticize it, we meme it, just show up. Consistency is key. Discipline over motivation. Cool. But nobody actually talks about how much resistance it takes to actually walk through the door. Let's talk about that for a second. Showing up isn't just about being present. It's about crossing invisible thresholds. Because before you show up, you're usually tired, unsure, overthinking, slightly insecure, and low key hoping nobody noticed you yet. And your brain will do everything it can to keep you from crossing that line. You'll clean instead, you'll research instead, you'll wait until you feel ready, which is really just a code for never. So, yeah, showing up is not soft, it's spiritual weightlifting. And here's where I want to break something down because not all presence is the same. So before I break this down, I want to name what we're actually talking about. Because when I say showing up, I don't mean physically being somewhere. I'm talking about how close you actually are to your own life. Because we all know what it feels like to be technically present, but emotionally absent, spiritually disconnected, creatively half committed. We've all been around the thing without being in it. And I think that's why so many creatives feel stuck. Not because they lazy, not because they're undisciplined, because they don't know where they actually are in relation to what they care about. So when I talk about outside, parking lot, in the house, in the room, at the table, I'm not talking about locations. I'm talking about levels of proximity. How close are you to the work, to the truth, to God, to yourself? You can be outside for something for years. You can live in the parking lot and call it progress. You can be in a house but never enter the room. And none of that makes you a failure. It just means you're human. So let's walk through these levels slowly, not to judge where you are, but to name it. Because once you know where you are, you stop beating yourself up and you start moving honestly. All right, so here's what I call outside. Outside is awareness. We outside, you know? You know the thing exists. You know you want to write. You miss making music. You know God's been nudging you about something. You're not ignoring it. You're just not touching it. Outside sounds like I've been thinking about starting. Dot dot dot. I've got ideas. I just haven't sat with them yet. Mm-hmm. Once things slow down. Dot dot dot. Outside is safe. No vulnerability, no risk, no failure. It's free. It's free to be outside, you know? You don't have to pay anything. But outside is also where dreams start collecting dust. Not dead, just untouched. So that takes us to parking lot. We call this parking lot pimping. Now this one is where most people live actually. Parking lot pimping is where you technically showed up, but you still got the engine running. You pulled up, you found parking, you sitting in the car strolling, watching folks in and out. Creatively, this looks like opening up the door, but not hitting record. Pulling out that notebook, but writing nothing real. Showing up to the event, but standing by the wall. Or joining Zoom with the camera off, mic muted, so cautious. Parking lot pimping is presence with an escape plan. Like, if the vibe's weird, I'm out. If I don't like this, I'll just say it wasn't aligned. If it fails, nobody really saw me. And listen, sometimes you need the stage. Sometimes you're warming up, but you can't build a life here. You know, who wants to build a life in the parking lot? So let's take it in the house. What do I mean when I say in the house? Now, if you're inside, that matters. You crossed the threshold. You showed up to the studio. You sat at the desk. You opened the book. You walked into church. But you're still holding your breath. Inside, but quiet. Inside, but guarded. Inside, still watching everybody else. In the house sounds like, let me just see how this goes. I'm here, but I don't want to mess anything up. This is fragile space, sacred space, uncomfortable space. God does a lot of work here because humility lives here. So you can be in the house, but let's take it one more step deeper. In the room. What does it look like to be in the room? Now something shifts. You're not just inside, you're present. You feel the room. You hear yourself think again. You're not performing. You're not hiding. You're not planning your exit. Creatively, this looks like writing badly on purpose, or playing wrong notes until something clicks, or sitting in silence without grabbing your phone, or maybe letting God speak without interrupting him with plans. This is where the nervous system settles. Oh, nobody's rushing me. Oh, I don't have to prove anything. This is where clarity starts. Not finishes, but starts. So, all right, you in the room. That's what's up. You made it from outside to in the parking lot to in the house to in the room. What's next? Next is at the table. Yo, this is different. At the table means ownership. You're no longer asking, do I belong? You're asking, what's mine to carry? See, at the table, your voice has weight, your decisions matter, your absence would be noticed. And here's the truth nobody says out loud. The table is way heavier than what it looked. That's why God don't rush people here. Because the real work don't even happen at the table. That's crazy. It happens before. And this is what I like to call in the mirror. Okay, so you was outside, you made it to the parking lot, you got in the house, then you got in the room, then you sat at the table. But let's take it a step back, because before you get to the table, let's look in the mirror. Not the Instagram mirror, the bathroom mirror. The one where you like, all right, what am I actually avoiding? God does a lot of work here, y'all, because you can't lie and listen at the same time. So while you in the bathroom, let's talk about one more. On the toilet. Yeah, I said it. On the toilet. Because this is where the performance drops. No phone, no audience, no thoughts. Some of the clearest creative decisions I've ever made happen right here. Sometimes you got to let go of those old habits, bad habits. Sometimes you have to let go of people that are not aligning with this season in your life. Sometimes you just gotta let go of old identities that you had of yourself. It is always like let go of old. Sometimes you gotta let go of new identities that you have of yourself. Sometimes you gotta let go of new people that's not aligning with you. So it's not just out with the old. Sometimes you gotta go out with the new. Certain things digest differently in our creative stomach, if you will. You know what I'm saying? So remember, sit your butt on that toilet. Let some of that stuff out. You can't hold it all in. Holy ground comes in weird places, y'all. Sometimes you gotta drop them kids off at the park. That's why I suggest building the house while you're living in the house. Most of us aren't showing up to something that's finished. We're living inside the thing we're building, creating while healing, working while learning, trusting God while still confused. And that's not a flaw, that's just reality. And I ain't trying to take you out of church, but listen, God moves in during construction. So, look, if you showed up, if you're in the room, if you made it to the table, now what? Here's some questions to ask yourself that's probably worth sitting with. What does my creativity need today, not forever? Am I trying to impress or trying to listen? What place lets me stay honest with God? Where am I present physically, but absent internally? What would enough for today actually look like? Y'all, presence doesn't ask you to sprint. It just asks you to stay. So yeah, showing up is hard. Staying present is harder. Listening is the hardest part. Not hustle speed, not panic speed, not algorithm speed, human speed, God honoring speed. The room isn't asking anything from you except honesty. So, take one more breath, y'all. You showed up today. That counts. Look, and we gonna figure the rest out one honest step at a time. All right? It's the Gold Giraffe, y'all. Peace.